Hebrews 11 and verse 7. By faith, Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house. I want you to imagine with me this morning for just a moment how Noah must have felt. He is described in the good book as a preacher of righteousness. And he spent a considerable amount of time, no doubt, preaching judgment to come. I want you to imagine how he must have felt when he knew that the people he grew up with, his neighbor, his friends, his co-workers, and keep in mind, Noah lived a lot longer than any of us are ever going to live. Literally for hundreds of years, Noah spent time with these people, shared Facebook posts with these people, no doubt. I mean, Noah spent a lot of time with these people, and now he knows they're not going to make it. Everyone is going to perish. How do you think he felt? I know as a preacher, it certainly had to be discouraging knowing that all those sermons were falling on deaf ears. No one was listening. Or were they? Was it true that Noah saved the world? I suppose it depends on what you mean by the question, because you could answer yes, and you could answer no. You know, Peter spoke of the world that then was, being overflowed with water and perishing. So we could say no. Noah did not succeed in saving the world of his day. But look, here we are this morning talking about Noah. And so in another sense, indeed, Noah saved the world. And Noah saved the world by, first of all, saving his own family. There are over 7 billion people on this planet with us as I speak. And I know just last Lord's Day and many Lord's Days like it, I made mention of the fact that we have been given a great commission, and we are to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And we hear this daunting task, and I think in the back of our mind we say, that's just impossible. There's no way we can do it, so we didn't even try. I submit to you, brethren, that we can indeed, again, save the world if we will begin, yes, concentrating on our own families. Indeed, our families are in trouble. It's no secret. The New York Times recently reported that well under half, somewhere in the 40 percentile, of men and women who are living together are doing so without the benefit of marriage and are raising their children in such an environment, in direct contradiction to God's moral standards. A third of all of our children today are raised in single-parent homes. 1/2 of all of our families will suffer from domestic violence just this year. More and more children are being born to unwed mothers. That wasn't bad enough. Consider the fact that in Washington, D.C., in spite of present trends, there are still a number of establishment types that are doing their best, particularly in our courts, to redefine the concept of marriage altogether. It's no longer a union or a contract between a man and a woman. Now it's between two dudes or two women. Our homes are in serious trouble. I work with young men every day who are serving time in prison. And I don't know that there's a single one that I've worked with yet that has grown up with his dad, that knows his dad, that has spent any quality time with his dad. And the sad thing is, and I don't mean this to be critical, but these young men, some of them in their mid-20s, early 30s, don't know the most basic things. How to crank a lawnmower, how to run a weed eater, how to use a blower. I mean, some of them probably don't want to show what they know because then they might be expected to do more than they want to do. I understand that, but I don't think that's the case. I think most of these young men just have had no one to show them how to be a man. That's tragic. Bring that closer to home, and I want you to think about trends among the people of God, here in our own congregation and elsewhere. Across the board, studies confirm well over half of our children, when they're old enough to be on their own, leave the Lord's church. Think about it. If we just saved our own children, can you imagine what a difference that would make as far as the number of people we have assembling each Lord's Day, the amount of resources available to us to do more, to reach more, if we just saved our own family? When Noah stepped into the ark, he did so with his 3 boys at his side. And by saving his family, Noah saved the world as well. We may not be able to reach 7+ billion people on this planet. And I know you hear me say that many times, that we've been given this great commission to go into all the world, and you say, we just can't do that. Well, we can, and we must save our own. Amen. How are we going to do this? Past Wednesday evening, spent a great deal of time as we're studying the life of King David and the trouble that came into his own home because of his own sin. And I observed then, as I will now, that as parents we can do and must do, are obligated to do, and if we love our children, we will do the very best that we can to set a godly example before our children, to teach our children. But ultimately, we must recognize that when our children are adults, they are just that. They are adults, and they are free moral agents, and they'll have to make their own choices. We cannot make our children make the right choices. We wish we could. It'd be nice if we could just flip a switch or just say abracadabra or whatever, and everything would fall into place. It's not so easy. However, recognizing we are all free moral agents and we do have to make our own choices, does not absolve us as parents from doing our level best to see to it that our children are saved. And now sometimes when you hear what I'm saying now, what you typically hear is, well, when my kids are little and I'm still dressing them and beating them and bringing them to Bible class and all those kinds of things, that when I'm doing that, that's when I'm really responsible. I submit to you that as parents, we are responsible to continue to set a godly example before, and yes, be there for our grown children throughout the remainder of our lives. Because whether we like it or not, even our grown children are still watching us, still paying attention to us, and yes, whether they admit it or not, still relying on us, if for nothing else, that emotional support many times. So yeah, this is a lifelong commitment. What can I do then as a parent? Number one, I have to make sure that I am right with the Lord myself. I can't expect my children to do something I'm not willing to do. I mean, we all know how silly it is to tell our children, do as I say, not as I do. Well, that's just empty talk. Anyway, they're going to do as you do, not as you say. And so I have to ask myself as a parent, have I obeyed the gospel? Are my priorities what they need to be? And as Brother Herman often reminds us, do others, especially my children, see Christ living in me? I need to do as a father, as God instructed me to do. And you fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. How do I do that? Could simply say, well, it begins by waking them up on Sunday mornings, whipping them if I need to, getting them dressed, getting them to Bible class, worship. That's important because we want to teach our children the importance of being involved in these kinds of activities. And yes, it's important to have our children in Bible class and involved in Lad to Leaders and all the other good programs we have available to them. Those things are important, but ultimately, the responsibility for raising our children does not rest in the church, does not rest in our youth program, does not rest in our Bible department. All these things are wonderful aids and supports, but primarily the responsibility for raising children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord falls on the shoulders of parents. God made fathers and mothers to be the primary teacher. So we need to teach our children. You say, well, I have them in Bible class. When was the last time you sat down and had a Bible study with your children? We train our children by loving discipline. Discipline lets them know there's some things that are right, some things that are wrong. We train our children by loving them and supporting them and giving them the kind of nourishing atmosphere at home that they desperately need to develop as human beings. To save our children, we must warn them of the dangers that are all around them. Drugs, alcohol, false religion, evolution, the kinds of things that infect our minds and influence our lives. We need to warn them about these things. Satan has a way to make all of these things appear cool and exciting and accepted and intelligent. He's always on the prowl, seeking the weakest among us. And who's the weakest among us if it's not our own children? This is why God is counting on us to train them in the way that they should go. Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village. I submit to you, it takes a godly family to raise children. Training our children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord certainly involves training them, instructing them, making them aware of the times in which they live, so they'll have a proper understanding of the godless teaching that's all around them and how to respond to these godless trends. Rather than, let's make no mistake about it, our world is in trouble. We know this. Like the time of Noah, our world is headed for disaster if something doesn't happen monumentally to change course. Like Noah's day, godlessness is everywhere. Every thought, every imagination of the thoughts of the hearts of men was only evil continually. Moses tells us, Genesis chapter 6. It's hard to find anything to watch on television anymore. Even if you're watching the Georgia Bulldogs, which is a very wholesome thing to do in football season, but if you're watching the Georgia Bulldogs, you have to endure the commercial and the stuff they're advertising. The sitcoms that are coming on TV. I'm like, are they really showing programs like that on TV? I don't watch that stuff. I don't know, but I'm aware that most of what's being paraded out before the world is just garbage. It's just garbage. And this is what our children are subjected to day and night. Our world is a world like Noah's day, and that it's filled with violence. The earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence, Genesis 6, verse 11 declared. Our hearts and prayers, of course, this week go out to those poor families in Santa Fe, Texas. Lord willing, we'll be Say more about that the next sermon this morning, Lord willing. How tragic it is that a young man would take a firearm and go to his own school and mercilessly gun down his schoolmates. Well, that's just evil. Well, yeah, it is. What's prompting this? It's like every week there's another school shooting somewhere, and a lot of insane people are saying, well, let's go, we have so many guns, and guns are just walking. Guns are not walking into schools and doing this. Crazy people are doing this. Evil people are doing this. What's causing this level of evil? Well, the fact that we probably know his name, and I'm not going to mention his name. We know his face. We know how old he is. We know where he went to school. I mean, you can imagine all the crazy people saying, look, all I have to do to be famous is go kill some folks. You can blame the mainstream media to a large extent for giving these people far more airtime than they deserve. I'm not suggesting that's the reason they're doing it, but it certainly is fueling it, I believe, in my humble opinion. We see kids today on social media, filming the beating of one of their classmates because it's cool or funny or whatever. Let's just go beat this kid to a pulp. Who is this kid? I don't know. Let's just go beat him up. The world is literally filled with violence. Why? Because there is absolutely no respect for human life. Like Noah's day, our families are not putting God first. It came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. What's that, Moses? These marriages were not based on godly principles, but lustful desire, period. It didn't make any difference what this union would do and what it would produce. Let's just marry the person that's prettiest or that makes me feel good or whatever. It'd be easy to get discouraged over the way things are today, knowing that our friends and neighbors are lost, living in sin. So I asked the question earlier. How do you suppose Noah felt? A preacher of righteousness, preaching to a world that, for the most part, simply refused to listen to him. And here we are, again, facing a world headed for disaster. And how are we going to reach 7 billion people? Like Noah. We can at least, by faith, move with fear and make those preparations that will ensure to the best of our ability and whatever is within our control to save our families. Let's broaden it a bit. What if we were to restore every wayward member of this congregation? Think of the impact that would make on us, on our ability to reach more people in our community, if we just think about saving our own. I'm saying all of this to couple what I said just a week or so ago. Yes, the mission field is worldwide. God expects us to reach the entire world to the best of our ability. But while we're reaching the world, let us not look past what's right in front of us, or sitting on the pew next to us, or maybe presently sitting in our lap. Are you right with the Lord? Have you obeyed the gospel of Christ? Do your children see Christ living in you? That's a challenge, isn't it? It's my prayer that every family in this congregation will have 100% participation in the kingdom of heaven, and ultimately enjoy the benefits of eternal life. It begins with a resolve. Sometimes it involves repentance on our parts. make things right that are amiss, to fix whatever deficiencies there are in our own lives. May we all make that renewed commitment today to save our own. What about you? Are you right with God? Are you subject to heaven's invitation? Can we assist you in any way? If so, please make that need known while together we stand and as we sing.
Jesus is tender.